Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have to wear my red for this person vlog, even though I got green on with my Wiz Smart Bulb, because this definitely is true. What I will talk about in this person vlog, number 104, I just say I love to hate Saskatchewan Roughrider fans. I definitely have always had that relationship with Saskatchewan Roughrider fans in general. I mean, you always debate for being a Calgary Stampeders fan, who is their biggest rival. I mean, traditionally it's always Edmonton, with the Edmonton Elks, especially on Labor Day. However, there's a different breed when it comes to Saskatchewan Roughrider fans. I would actually admit, with Saskatchewan Roughrider fans that come to our house at McMahon Stadium, that it's still too many to be annoying, in my mind, for being a team that's coming into someone's house. I mean, it's just unique that you have a quarter of Calgary's population comes from Saskatchewan, and heck, even for this Calgary sports fan, I do actually have family that traces back to Saskatchewan. I think Saskatchewan and Atlantic Canada are two things in common, where everybody in Canada either has connections to either part of the country. Me, I be Saskatchewan, and I do have family members and relatives that live in Saskatchewan. I mean, we still get too many fans that come in McMahon. I mean, I remember it used to be even more ramped up, 10, 15 years ago, because Ryder Farrell usually sets up, beer tents near McMahon Stadium, and Ryder fans get, completely drunk before the game, where they could barely stand up. And then I think, the Stampeders finally, cracked down on that. That's one of the reasons. I mean, there's definitely a problem if you had 12 too many before the game and you could barely stand up to get in. That spells trouble, especially in a, crowded environment, especially with proud fans, both with red and green. And I'm always going to be cheering red. Heck, just admit it, I won't look as good wearing green with a watermelon in my head. I look my best in red. I always will proudly cheer red, but I always have a love-hate relationship with Saskatchewan Roughrider fans, more so when they come in our house, as I mentioned, and the fact that in the playoffs. One interesting stat for Calgary Stampeders and Saskatchewan Roughriders when it comes to playoffs. Even though you could say the past 25 plus years, the Calgary Stampeders have been really the cream of the crop of the CFL, other than a few F-Troop days and a couple seasons that were not as dominant. I mean, Saskatchewan, I'm going to still say, has a longer track record of not having as successful teams, but they definitely have a rabid, dedicated fan base that I kind of have to admire. But getting back into the playoffs, Calgary's only beaten Saskatchewan twice in the playoffs, in 1994 and in 2012. And 2012, that definitely was a little too close for comfort. But Calgary definitely always seems to be on the wrong end of it when it comes to playing Saskatchewan in the playoffs. And it hurts things even more when we lose here. I mean, it's one thing to lose there in their house, and I experienced it a couple weeks ago when I went to Saskatchewan in Ryder. I mean, I went to 4 games in Saskatchewan, or in some Calgary Stampeders. 2 of the games I actually went to, the Calgary Stampeders were opponent. One was the last time that Calgary was played at the old stadium, and 2 weeks ago was my first time that I went to a live game in the new stadium. And actually, consider I was cheering Calgary and the rabid fan base. And yes, I would say it is the most hostile environment to be a Calgary Stampeders fan on the road is in Saskatchewan. Actually, not Edmonton. In fact, based on my personal experiences, Saskatchewan is the most hostile environment to be a Calgary Stampeder fan in. I actually would put Winnipeg second before I put Edmonton. At least that's from my personal experiences. However, I think part of the experience is I've been to Commonwealth Stadium enough times up in Edmonton that I know where many of the Stampeder fans catch the game for the Labor Day rematch. All the purposes for a couple weeks ago when I went to Mosaic Stadium to cheer on the Calgary Stampeders in Saskatchewan. I wanted to be like as close behind the Calgary Stampeders bench, and actually I was close enough to the action that I watched the highlights of that game, which we won, by the way, on a last-second field goal. I gotta put that in there. I was able to pick myself out in the crowd in some highlights, but I guess it's not really hard to stand out when you're wearing red around green. But actually, both times when I was there to cheer for Calgary in Saskatchewan, I actually found all the fans and the people that work at the games are actually pretty good. I always found in general, and it's gotten better. I will put that out there because I have heard some Stampeder fans say that they stopped going to games, especially to bring their kids because of the rabid fans. But I think part of that problem is the fact that the game, well, I'm going to say all the Radiville parties they used to have when, they get all drunk and then you get unruly. I mean, as long as you don't, say things below the belt, when you don't insult someone on their race, religion, family, below the belt shots, I feel you're fine. But I still, like I say, have to love to hate it, just because of, how many fans are in our... There's definitely a lot more Rider fans that come to catch a game in Calgary when Saskatchewan's the opponent than, let's say, when I was in Saskatchewan cheering on the Calgary Stampeders. It's definitely still way too friendly, I find, for Saskatchewan in Calgary than Calgary is in Saskatchewan. I mean, I did capture a couple moments of my trip there in the stadium, and I know that, like I say, it's more hostile to be a Calgary Stampeders fan in Saskatchewan, I find, from my personal experience, because I felt the boos were a lot more intense when we came out the field. But the other thing that I really felt the tension coming in was after when Calgary came out on the field, and then they showed the video of the pregame, the countdown, and suddenly everyone in Mosaic were starting to stand up and cheer before Saskatchewan was brought out. I definitely felt that tension, and I don't quite feel that at McMahon Stadium. So that's, the huge reason why I always have a love-hate relationship with Saskatchewan Roughrider fans, mostly with how many fans there are here. It's almost kind of similar to if you're a Flames fan, that Calgary-Edmonton fan, we get the rivalry, we get each other when it comes to, the Battle of Alberta. But when I find, as a Calgary Flames fan, when I'm in the Saddledome, I find Canuck fans, to be honest with you, are a lot more aggressive and annoying. Kind of similar to what Rider fans are when they come here in Calgary. But I think they've taken out those beer tents, and that definitely has made it a little better, a little more tolerable. It's just the volume of it. When I always come to Calgary to do a game, when Saskatchewan's opponent, I said there's too much green, and I'm not talking about the field. But I just still say, there's definitely a very dedicated and rabid fan base, which I gotta admire that too, which is kind of that love-hate. I would sometimes say I would make a great Rider fan if I was one. That's if I looked, good wearing green with a watermelon on my head. But we know that's not going to work. I'm always going to brace wearing red, wearing the black hat, especially in this rivalry. And I know it definitely would say another factor with, the Riderville Bureau tents, set up, which they don't do that anymore for obvious reasons, because now it's like if you're so drunk before going to the game, you won't get allowed to get in. But I know another factor that the rivalry heat up a lot more was if you go back to 2005, when finally the F-Troop days were over for the Calgary Stampeders, with the owner's son quarterback, and Michael Faber, but Fred Viteri was the big powder keg in that situation. But when we had local ownership that took over the team, and we made the biggest splashes in free agent frenzy, when the Calgary Stampeders signed Jermaine Copeland at the time, the top receiver, known for his dancing. However, we signed Henry Burris, we had him first before he tried his luck with the Bears and the Packers in the NFL before he came back to the CFL. And during the F-Troop days, we said no to Dave Dickinson or even Henry Burris before Henry Burris eventually went to Saskatchewan. And I guess it's how he left Saskatchewan that, and then he came here at free agent frenzy. And then I know at the time Roy Shivers, the head coach, he said, "Oh, well, first time we see him, we're just going to break his head like any other opponent." And that definitely has heat up a lot more. I mean, it's definitely simmered down a lot more because it's been many, many years since we had Henry. And then the fact that you could probably say Saskatchewan had their ultimate revenge on Henry in 2013 when they won the Grey Cup in their house. And now he's in the Hall of Fame and all that. But definitely, there is still some of that sense with Henry in Riderville. But that amped up that rivalry a lot more, and I actually was kind of, appreciate what Henry's done, but I was definitely ready to move on from all that when we decided to change in the guard at the time. And now it's all Bo, and definitely took a lot of hits in the fans with Bo, and I always had to try to defend him. I always had to try to get in there cheering on Bo first for everyone else started booing him, or, "Hey Bo, they're not booing you, they're booing you." There we go. That's what Bo does. They're not booing him, they're booing him. Same with Boo Earns. But that's all I have for, Saskatchewan Roughrider fans. And I'm always going to have a love-hate relationship with them, but it's definitely the strongest CFL market. And I remember there was one commercial where Saskatchewan Roughriders had a commercial that said that the Rider Nation was everywhere in the country. Where they showed like a Rider fan in all the cities in Canada. I know that Calgary and Winnipeg. Edmonton, gets the brunt of the Riderville the most because of being the closest proximity. Oh yeah, I guess that 97th Grey Cup in 2009. I definitely suffered the brunt of that. But thankfully how that game played out. Too many men. Since that moment, that's been funny. When Saskatchewan gets caught with too many men. But it wasn't the Grey Cup game, it was the first game in 2010 that prolonged overtime. But I just say they're definitely a devoted, rabid fan base that you hear people in that province. They drive like 5-6 hours on game day to go to a game. So you might think maybe I was crazy. A couple weeks ago I took the Rider Express from Calgary to Regina, but I had to stop up in Edmonton where I was on the bus for 14 hours to get to Regina to catch the game, and made that trip worth it with that win, and then go all the way back, stopping in Edmonton. But that's all I gotta say. I'm always gonna have a love-hate relationship with Saskatchewan Roughrider fans. I'm gonna say it's not as bad. There's still too many. There's always gonna be too many. I'm not too sure how we can be able to make it even more home field advantage for Calgary, like in Saskatchewan. And I do have a feeling the way the West is shaping up in 2021, there might be a big playoff game between Calgary and Saskatchewan. Ooh, playoffs, Calgary and Saskatchewan. That still definitely always gives me goosebumps, but because we've just been on the wrong end of it more often. And I say even my first Calgary Stampeders game I went to, I actually was against Saskatchewan Roughriders. I definitely saw how crazy the fans were then. But back in those days when we had Flutie and Sapundus, we dominated the league, and Saskatchewan was down here. But it's definitely a much, much different beast now. But that's all I have. So anyways, I'd like to say, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hibben, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, recap game stories. But I also do have a variety of non-sports content, like personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and I would say I also do share my experience with them on the road or a sport event. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know what you do, just make sure you like, subscribe. All my other social links down in the description below. And I do have a second channel in Brett Harmon Shorts where I post my secondary channel, or post my YouTube shorts on that channel exclusively. Actually, before I part off, I know another peak moment with dealing with Rider fans was in 2012 in that playoff game that I had to talk to Usher to get some drunk guys out because they were not accepting the fact that, you know, you're in our house, not their house. And I think after that, things were slowly getting better. As the years go on, well, as I say, I'm always going to cheer Red. Expect a few more games in the future when I go to Saskatchewan. Where I'm Red, all I ask is I want to be in one piece. I don't deliver below the bell shots. So that's all I have. I just want to say go Stamps go. Thanks for watching. I'm always going to love and hate Saskatchewan Roughriders fans. So I was saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.